All right, welcome to Truth, Culture, Life. I'm your host, Royce, and I'm joined today by my co-host for this episode. We have Barry Smith. Barry, you're a special guest and also a co-host. So how are you doing today?
Well, today I'm doing much better, finally. I guess it was my turn in the barrel, and today was my first day out in a week.
So in other words, you were sick.
I was sick, and it was odd because I was really sick on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And
that's terrible.
I didn't get anywhere near my family, so it was kind of an isolated Christmas. I went to Mass on Christmas Eve, and probably shouldn't have done it, and the church was just overwhelmed with people, so that probably didn't help the matter. But it really kicked in by that night, and so today was my first day out in a week. It felt really good to get out.
Wow, that's too bad. I think we all ended up getting sick over Thanksgiving. So luckily we weren't sick, and we had a baby 2 days before Christmas Eve, which was awesome.
It is awesome. Yeah, it's your Christmas baby.
Christmas baby, that's right. And we were supposed to not have the baby. My wife was due December 27th. And we were, we have 5 little kids at home, so there was a chance we could have easily missed Christmas and been at the hospital, and that would have been difficult. But it was great the way it worked out. The baby came right in the middle of basically right before a snow blizzard, which apparently a lot of women go into labor during snow blizzards.
And I love his name, Maximilian Christopher.
Good job, Maximilian Christopher. That's right. Yeah, and
if you reverse that, you get Chris Max.
Chris Max, that's right.
I love it. You got a Christmas baby.
Yeah, that's right. I'm dyslexic, so when I look at it, it looks like Chris Max to me anyway. Yeah, so I figured today we would just get on and do a little recap of 2022. What a year this has been. I mean, first of all, look, we can talk about headlines. There's going to be plenty of headlines coming out. The biggest, you can just Google it, the biggest stories of 2022, Supreme Court, Russia, all this silly pop culture stuff. Man, I mean, there's no shortage of craziness that has occurred. So, I think we could each maybe pick 1 or 2 things that come to our mind. I bet both of us are thinking about Dobbs, but I'll just turn it over to you. I mean, what's in your mind when you think of the biggest thing or things that happened in 2022? What comes to your mind?
Well, Dobbs is right up there, most certainly. But it was not the dominating thought when you introduced. I think I was taken more aback by the results of the election and where our country was expecting the quote red wave to go, what the outcome was, where the disappointments laid thereafter, and where the realities are where we lay now with both houses, and how the Republican Party, the conservatives, the pro-life people really need to regroup and reform and take a look at what the Democrats have been doing to utilize a very effective election campaign to get people out voting. Because I don't necessarily think it was just that we were underwhelmed with people voting on the conservative side. I think that we were just outmaneuvered drastically. And we were in the previous national election. And I think to take the positives out of that, we need to reform, restructure, regroup, and figure out how to play the game equally and as fairly and to level the playing field moving forward.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, were we outsmarted? I mean, look, there's no question. Unfortunately, to some extent, we definitely have been outsmarted. Without, obviously there's a lot of nefarious things that go on, I think, in this country that people are just completely blinded to with respect to everything from propaganda to, sort of politicization of government agencies. I mean, these are things that are like conspiracy theories, but they're not. You literally, the Twitter files came out recently because of Musk, and that's fascinating. I don't know how many people have read that, but that's like, to me, that is the biggest story. That is not the biggest story. In other words, it's huge. The things that are being exposed just from a private organization and the influence that government actors had on silencing citizens during the election, and going back to 2020 and even 2022, and it's hardly getting any coverage in the media or in the press, which is fascinating to me. But you're right, Barry, when you say we've been sort of outmaneuvered. Look, the Democrats and the left are so good at things like ballot harvesting. I mean, and they take. There was just a screenshot that I took on Twitter, and if I can pull it up here in a few minutes, I will. But it basically showed how with COVID, the percentage of Democrats that voted by absentee ballot went up by like 60%. But on the other side, on the Republican end, Republicans largely brushed it off and showed up in person to vote. So what does it mean? It's interesting. Why would that skew the vote? I'm not sure, but Democrats, what they're so successful and good at doing is harvesting ballots. Every vote counts in their opinion. And so they'll literally knock on doors and sign people up to vote with these absentee mail-in ballots.
The mail-in, yeah.
That's right. And wow. And they turn them in, and they ballot harvest, and then they do these massive ballot dumps, and there's hardly any verification. A lot of these things are probably legitimate ballots, but I guarantee it just common sense to understand that there's probably a whole lot of them that aren't. And then how many of those people are double voting? I mean, I can just show up at my polling place, and if they ask you for an ID, if you don't have one, okay, do you have a letter or something, or a piece of mail? If you don't have that, there's all these different things that they eliminate, and then they figure out a way to let you vote anyway. Anyways, so yeah, I think Republicans need to get better about, first of all, utilizing that, like knocking on doors, the same that a politician would. Like, let's knock on doors and explain our issues. And people are probably, I bet you a majority of people are probably more conservative than not. We just aren't very good at winning those arguments, I think. I mean, what say you?
Well, I agree with that. And I also think by nature that people are just characteristically, I hate use the word lazy, but their numbers are always low at midterms. Even at national, you get some low numbers over the years. So for the Democrats to harvest such large numbers at midterms is really a red flag for us to look at that. And if they're doing it in a legal way, in an ethical way, well, then we better jump on board and figure out what we're doing. Yeah. And if people just don't want to get out and vote because they're lazy or they're comfortable in their living room in front of the TV, well, then by God, go get the vote like they're doing.
Right.
Give them the ballot. They make it so easy for them to vote, and they get that representation. They get that harvesting, like you said, and we're way behind on that.
No, we absolutely are. I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see. I'm on Twitter now. And let's take a look at this. I mean, this is a thread that came out today. And it's just fascinating. It's an incredible thread. And I posted earlier today. I mean, frankly, satisfying. If you look at this guy's whole thread, he posts all these stats and references, and here it is, voting by mail by party, and look at the increase. 2008, they're roughly the same, and there's legitimate reasons for people to vote by mail-in ballot, or in Florida, absentee ballot, which is very different. A mail-in is you're just not getting off the couch and you're sitting at home. Absentee is legit. Like, you've got military service members that are overseas with their family or whatever, and there's a legal mechanism for them to be able to vote absentee. Florida has got this down to a science. And I don't remember how many millions of absentee ballots they go through each year, but they literally get them counted on day one. And then you see these other states where they've implemented recently mail-in ballots, which are different. Again, you're sitting on your couch, and they can't get them counted for 4 or 5 days. And it's just phenomenal. But look at this. Look at this jump. 2016, again, these numbers are roughly the same. But then, boom, pandemic, 60% of Democrats voting by mail versus 32 on the Republican side. So some little increase. But look at that jump.
Yeah.
And where is it at in 2022? I think that's equally interesting. And then I want to see if I can pull up this guy's other thread because it's a phenomenal thread. Oh yeah, he goes into the Hunter Biden story. Oh yeah, there's another big story of 2022. Mm-hmm. Hunter Biden's laptop was real. Yeah. I thought it was Russian propaganda. That's what literally, I think you had 30 members of the intelligence community telling us that story was completely fake. You had the media censoring stories on that subject matter. Turns out it's real. Do you think we'll ever see any legal recourse on the Hunter Biden story?
No.
Not at all. We're just not going to see it. Yeah.
No, certainly not in the next few years. I really don't think it'll surface.
Let's see.
I don't think we'll ever see what was in there.
Well, I mean, there was just a report that actually was published. I think it might have been today, or it's a website that literally showcases it. And I don't know how this group got the website. Let's see if I can pull up Twitter files. That's what I want to look for, because this is a fascinating story as well. And it showcases, here we go. Let me just click on the hashtag. This guy's got a whole bunch of stuff on it. The Twitter files are phenomenal. And if anybody hasn't taken a look at these, there's a number of threads. And what Elon Musk basically did is he released all these unredacted files. At first, actually, there was a general counsel at Twitter that was going through these. It turned out he's an ex-FBI guy, and so he ended up getting fired because he was censoring the stuff that wasn't supposed to be censored. But Twitter files are phenomenal. This Barry Weiss has launched something called the Free Press, which is a huge story as well. Interestingly, try to Google Free Press, and you will not find the website for Free Press. You will not find it. And if you do, it's because it's buried. And here's the website for the Free Press. And this is a website that is completely independent of the Associated Press. It's independent of Reuters. It's independent of all the sort of shenanigans that we've seen infiltrate our media in the United States. And it's just, here it is. Here's just facts. Here's the Twitter files. I call them the Twitter files. The Twitter files. Yeah. And it's just phenomenal. Have you looked at this at all? Have you looked at the Twitter files at all, Barry?
Yeah, I've gone through it briefly. I haven't looked at it in depth very much yet.
Yeah. No, and it's one of those things that it's a lot of reading, and it's phenomenal. And they keep releasing them in batches. And again, I think that's the biggest story. That is not the biggest story of 2022. The media doesn't want to showcase their bias and their ignorance in terms of ignoring things like Hunter. Did they even ignore Hunter, or was it more purposeful? I don't know.
Well, he certainly merits being ignored, but in this case, I think there's a bit more involved.
Yeah. And if you Google things like biggest stories of 2022, you just sort of get the same old things. I mean, even from sources that I consider a little bit more modern. I mean, I'm at the point now where I trust almost no mainstream media, unfortunately. Russia, that's obviously a big story. Pandemic enters 3 years. I mean, come on, really? Are these the biggest stories of 2022? Dobbs, the election, I think you rightly pointed that out. Twitter files. What else? What else is a big story of 2022, Barry? Any other concepts or suggestions there?
Well, those are I think if I was going to rank the top two, I think Dobbs and the election would be the number 1 and 2 for me.
Okay.
2 and 1. Yeah.
Yeah. Dobbs is huge. There's no question.
Certainly. Yeah. Especially when you look at it historically, and through the project that I'm involved in, and the Heroes of Life project, and working firsthand with the people that founded the March for Life, and the 50 years of their life. Unfortunately, some aren't alive to see that decision, that outcome. Number one, the most famous of that group would be Nellie Gray. Yeah. And, for them to sacrifice, and when I mean sacrifice, they sacrificed the efforts and the grassroots communications and the organization at the time and the sacrifice from their families that they put in just 4 months, Royce, from October, when they first met in October of 73 at Nellie Gray's house in DC, and put the very first March for Life together in just 4 months. You just can't imagine the amount of sacrifice that those people put in to organize that and get the money. And, John Maughan organizing all the buses, and Eileen Vogel working with the Women Concerned for the Unborn Child out of Pittsburgh. And she immediately got a hold of Joe Scheidler, and Joe gave her some advice on what to do. And unfortunately, Joe's gone too now. But for all those hours and those terms of love and endearment to the commitment to life, and then this decision comes down back on June 24th, and unfortunately, some of them just didn't see the outcome.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, their efforts will always be remembered, will never be forgotten from where I stand.
Well, look, I believe, it's hard not to imagine many of those people. I mean, Nellie Gray, Joe Scheidler. I mean, look, those people are smiling down from heaven, and I'm sure they're rejoicing with all the little babies up there that are, just think about it. I remember a story that I heard, and I've heard Joe reference this a few times, hearing Joe Scheidler speak. And it was something along the lines, you keep working, you keep doing this until that fateful day when you hear the words, "Welcome home, thy faithful servant." And what was he talking about? He was talking about, literally serving something bigger than himself. And that's what he did. And for anybody listening to this, check out Action for Life. That was an organization that Joe and his wife started many, many years ago, and it still exists today. And Ann is still at the helm, and Eric is helping to run it now. And they've just got an amazing ministry based out of Chicago. And Joe endured some things that most people would just be appalled to even know that he endured. I mean, standing on bridges, holding up signs and getting, paint thrown on him, or getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, him being an elderly man and getting punched, and it's part of it. It's part of the sacrifice. He offered it up. So it reminds me, I'm going to be hopefully doing an episode in the next couple of weeks, discussing sacrificial suffering. What does that mean? And Joe, we should talk about him during that episode, because he embodied that, and Nellie Gray talked about that a lot too. One of the things that I spoke with Nellie Gray about before she passed away was the march. A lot of people always talked about they would love to move the march to a warmer time of year. And that was way before Dobbs. That was 10 plus years ago that I had that conversation with her before she passed. And she passed in 2012. But she said, no, we should never move the date. It's good that it's miserable. It's good that it's freezing. It's good that it's uncomfortable, because pilgrimages are not supposed to be easy. If it's easy, then it's a vacation. And we're here to sacrifice. We're here to suffer, and we're here to, spread awareness and to end abortion. And that misery that we experience with the weather is part of that sanctification, that process. Yeah. And just, wow, hearing those words of wisdom from a woman like that was just so inspiring.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, because on that Saturday in October of 73, Nellie had hosted a group of constituents at her house. And as Eileen calls them, the Beltway thinkers. And they were discussing the idea of having a march, for a constitutional amendment. Just a one-time march is what they were going to do. And it was an overwhelming no. Every single person said no, because the weather, we won't get it we won't get it put together in time. It's too cold. We won't get the people there. On and on and on. It was just an overwhelming no. And then when Eileen invited the 6 people from out of town to stay for dinner, and that was John Maughan and Lou Gardner and Bill Devlin, Peggy Jaycox, Eileen Vogel, and Marianne Pierce. And Nellie said, "I want to hear what you have to say." And they all went around the table, and it was an overwhelming yes. We're going to do it. And that's where that was the inception of the March for Life right there. So yeah, they took into account that weather and those conditions and the other terms that were to be met on life's terms. Yeah, it is a mortification. Yeah. I've been to a lot of marches where it was absolutely miserable walking up Constitution Avenue. But it's when you're with several 100,000 other people, and the merits of the joy of life far overwhelm any snow or sleet or what other conditions that might be thrown at you.
No, absolutely. That's a great way to sort of recap what that's all about. And now that Dobbs has overturned Roe v. Wade, we're still going to March for Life in Washington, D.C., and we'll be there in 2023 in January. And there have been a lot of discussions about, creating a new march sometime to commemorate Dobbs. But I think for now, the march is really focused on a couple different things. One, first of all, Roe v. Wade is gone, but the spirit of Roe v. Wade exists, and it's a nefarious spirit. It's this culture of death, and it exists big time. And there is this movement to codify Roe at the federal level. There's movement with we see free states now, and we see abortion states. Free states where babies are free to grow and exist and be loved in the womb, and other states where they're destroyed and killed by abortion. It's sickening and it's sad because abortion breaks hearts. It hurts women and the babies. It destroys families, and nothing positive really comes from that at all. And so we march to remember the 63 or 65 million babies that have died in the United States since Roe v. Wade, and to hopefully make sure that Roe never happens again at the federal level. It's up to the people to make sure that that Congress and the Senate understand that people don't want federal mandated abortion in this country. And now we take our fights to the states.
Right. In everything, in essence, the big pushback after June 24th, and the massive outcry from the left and the violence and the anger. But, in reality, it was just, we're back to where we were in 1973.
No, that's right. It's interesting you say that. 67, I think, pregnancy centers have been torched or burned down in the last year, largely because of Dobbs. And hardly any national press on those clinics being destroyed by violence. How many Catholic churches have been burnt and vandalized and desecrated? And again, hardly any press. There might be some, very short headline, buried somewhere and on some website or app. But it's not headline news. It's not front page news. But imagine if that was like a DNC headquarters that was firebombed. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Right? You'd have the FBI descending on every conservative's house within a 30-mile radius. But I don't know that there's been one major arrest announced, at least, with respect to the people destroying pregnancy centers or Catholic clinics. Now, on the other hand, we've seen several big pro-lifers arrested in 2022. We've seen activists get arrested and have their houses sort of stormed by federal agents.
Right at their own home.
At their own home with children present and guns drawn and just traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I work with groups like the Thomas More Society, who's involved in some of those cases, defending those people. And I think America is largely waking up. I think things like the Twitter files help too, because it really sort of reaffirms the suspicions that so many people have in this country, that there's this huge bias and sort of uneven application of the law. With respect to political interests. Conservatives, it seems like, are targeted. They're censored. They're kicked off social media. A conservative news outlet literally doesn't show up on Google at all. You Google the free press and you don't find it. They hide it. Anyway, so hopefully 2023, what's your prediction for 2023? What do you think that we're going to be looking at in terms of politics? There's going to be a new majority in the House. So what say you?
Well, I move forward with a lot of optimism, certainly. Politically, I think the guns are going to be drawn. It's going to be an active year of campaigning. It's going to start heavily by this spring. And as we get into the summer, you know, where you're going to start to see some, you're going to see the mold of some of the candidates start to emerge. And I think on the pro-life front, like you were saying, it is going to be a lot more heavily involved at the state level. I think we need to get active. We need to help other states that aren't quite as active right now. I know in Chicago, we've had a March for Life for several years. San Fran, you know, has been out there for many years. But I think as the federal picture fades out on Roe versus Wade and the states pick up their own authority again, I think there's a lot of call for activism there. And I see a lot of positive opportunities to get involved with that too. So
no, that's great. Yeah, Barry, thank you for that. That's wonderful. I think on my side, echoing that, you know, the states, one of the things that I'm hoping to do in 2023 is take the Law of Life Summit to at least 10 abortion states. We did one last year in Schaumburg. It was great. And I want to take that and go into states that have created constitutional rights to abortion or are considering those ballot measures, states that have, you know, that are promoting abortion tourism. And we want to host summits in those states with local leaders that are involved in pregnancy resources centers, maternity homes, local politicians, local religious leaders on alternatives to abortion, on ways that we can fight that culture of death in those states, because it's a battle and it's a struggle. And so I think the summit is uniquely positioned. I'm biased because I started the summit, but I think we've got this unique position in that we've been doing summits for over 10 years. And so we know how to bring people together for those forums. And so maybe that's one way to mobilize people in those states to speak out, to speak up and to do something about these things that we don't agree with. And there's other groups that are doing this as well. Sidewalk Advocates for Life is great. They do trainings, and that's huge. I mean, look, and here's a question I get into a lot as an attorney. What am I allowed to do on the sidewalk? At what point do I cross the line in my trespassing? At what point do security guards or police cross the line and they're infringing on my constitutional rights? And so those are some important questions. There's all sorts of things that go into that from the federal to state level, depending on what the rules are and where you are. And so I think we can address those topics. Barry, we're almost out of time. Am I going to be seeing you at the March for Life and the Law of Life Summit in DC in January?
Oh yeah, I'm coming in on Wednesday, the 18th, I believe. And then we'll be at the summit on the 19th. And we'll be marching on the 20th. And then coming back to Chicago on the 21st. So
that's great. That's wonderful. So yeah, you'll be there. I'm just adding a banner right now so people can be sure to check it out. We are going to be, let's see if I can plop it in here real quick. Law of Life Summit. People can go to lawlife.org and learn more about that. That'll be on January 19th in Washington, D.C. It's the day before the March for Life. And we're going to have a great turnout. There's a lot of other cool events going on in DC as well. We've got the Vans for Life dinner. I think that's going to be the evening of January 19th. And my understanding is Kirk Cameron's going to be speaking at that, helping to raise money for pro-life pregnancy units. Those things are great. If you were able to put mobile pregnancy units in states that have abortion clinics, and literally you can just park them right out front, you know, come in and get your free ultrasound before you have the abortion. And when women see ultrasounds of their babies, I feel like a majority of them choose life. And there's so much testimony and stories about that. So, all right, Barry, I think it's hard to believe it, but we're at 30 minutes already. The time goes by very quickly. I really appreciate you joining today for this sort of brief, impromptu recap of 2022.
It was great to be here. Great to be here. Thanks.
All right, Barry, we're gonna sign off. I want to thank everybody for joining Truth Culture Life. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can just do @Truth Culture Life. We're also on Facebook, and you can go to our website, truthculturelife.com. Talk to you soon.